Welcome to The Innovators. Each week, we're serving up real talk with badass women who are dishing out the truth. No fluff, no BS here, just raw, honest stories and lessons to inspire and empower the next generation of trailblazing women. We're here to keep it real and pay it forward. I'm your humble host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, investor, and advisor. It's a great pleasure today to have with us someone who I think you're going to learn a lot from, especially in climate, but I think a lot of other areas too. Yoca Arditi-Rocha, who is the executive director of the CLEO Institute. Yoca, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Cynthia. I'm looking forward to this great conversation.
So I want to take the consumer back a little bit, the listener. How did you get where you're at? I mean, you're in climate, and it's an unusual place, not in today's climate, but for women to be in it and in such a big way. How did you get where you're at? What's your background?
Mm. So I should start by telling you that in the climate movement, women are leading the way, truly. But
Really,
I
really.
I actually yeah, and I love to tell you more about that. But I major in biology, so it wasn't
Mhm.
really by accident. I grew up in the Caribbean. I was born in Puerto Rico, but I grew up in Dominican Republic, surrounded by
Mhm.
beautiful, nature,
Yeah.
ocean. And my dad was an outdoors person, so we were always camping, fishing, snorkeling. I also watch a lot of Jacques Cousteau documentaries and remember being
Yeah, yeah,
fascinated
yeah.
by the marine world. And so I wanted to be a marine biologist and work in aquariums and train flipper. And so I left the island to pursue a career in biological science in the US, and that's how I started.
That's really interesting. And taking to now to climate change, what obviously your background in biology, but also growing up in a beautiful island setting, you're really a climate activist, right? How has this journey evolved and your influence in policy at a national level? It's fascinating. Tell us more about the CLEO Institute, if you would.
Of course. Well, as I said, I was always very attuned to nature and conservation. But it wasn't until I became a mom and I lived through Miami's, where actually the 2005 hurricane season, which was
Yeah.
a very devastating
Yes.
hurricane season. And it seemed like we were preparing for a hurricane, week after week.
Hmm.
Had a 1 year old and a 3 year old. And we were going through one of those hurricanes, and it was a very terrifying moment, even though I had come from the Caribbean and I certainly knew hurricanes.
Yeah.
But I had been feeling that something was different about hurricane seasons, and hurricanes were intensifying faster. They were becoming more devastating in a rapid manner. And one moment, I really was fearful for our lives, and we almost lost our roof in one of those instances. And so, fast forward years later, I found myself more immersed into what was happening to our atmosphere, researching, learning. But it wasn't until almost 10 years later that I actually ended up living in Lima, Peru, and the United Nations Climate Summit was being held there the year prior to the Paris one, where
Mhm.
the Paris Climate Global Accord was signed in 2015.
Mhm.
And to me, it started with education. I truly believe that knowledge is power. And so I decided to, do what I could as a mother, as an educator, and decided upon myself to create this University of Climate for Youth in Lima, Peru, just to train people on what was happening to that atmosphere, so they would be part of the movement. They would become advocates for themselves. They would seek solutions, and they would demand the global climate agreement that we were all seeking, which was the
Mhm.
first time that the entire countries of the world come
Yeah.
together to decide to tackle the climate emergency. And so that's how I started. And I ended up convening more than 500 students in Lima, and host them for a couple of days so they could be educated, they could be empowered, they could be inspired to take action.
I see this, the whole climate initiative now, there's so many people engaged around the world related to it. And you have had great success mobilizing Gen Z. and actually moving them forward. How have you done this? What have the strategies you've actually used? I mean, I know traditionally in what I've been reading, they're very much more involved in climate and activities and activation, but you've really built a practice related to this. You really go after them.
And so it wasn't, back then in 2014, 2015, we were engaging young people, and young people really were the ones demanding worlds to take action. I mean, they are on the front lines. They are going to be inheriting this
Yes.
warming world we're leaving them
Yes.
with.
Yes.
But at the CLEO Institute, which CLEO stands for Climate Leadership Engagement Opportunities, we make it personal, we make it urgent, and we also make it hopeful. We put them at the center to make sure that not only they're inspired and empowered, knowing what the solutions are, but that they're
Yeah.
driving it, that they see themselves as part of something bigger, and that they see themselves as part of this world community of youth-led that are really seeking the solutions that we need, because we don't have to come up with new technologies to
Right.
curb the climate emergency. We already have them. What really is getting in the way is our inaction.
Yeah, and you can see, I mean, with change in government policy, right? Enabling those actions, it's a lot of grassroots, I'd imagine, versus so much
It
policy, because policy goes in and out of favor at times. And as we know right now, it's not so much in favor in the US, unfortunately. But how do you keep that going, at during these particular time periods and keep them motivated?
Well, we tackle them from the bottom up, so in a grassroots manner, and also from the top down, from a grassroots perspective as well. We engage with policymakers and decision makers and heads of local, state, and governmental agencies, because policy without advocacy is just papers,
Yeah.
and advocacy without policy is just noise. And so we need that multi-pronged approach. And I think that's what we have seen really push this movement forward.
Mhm.
Yes, sometimes we take a few steps forward and we take then a few steps back, but
Yeah.
ultimately, and know being this for more than 20 years now, we are moving forward. Although I know it seems that with extreme weather events and tragic events like the LA fires, just to
Yeah.
name one recently, it
Yeah.
seems like we're definitely not moving fast enough, because the climate emergency is a solvable issue, but it is time bound. The urgency of how quickly we solve it is really
Right.
what is going to depend on how much suffering we actually curb.
What do you see kind of now and into the near future? How can we all get involved? What's an easy step that we can take to get involved in climate change?
Well, I think in the US, we are right now at a crossroads, right? We have a new
Mm-hmm.
administration
Mm-hmm.
that is coming in with a different perspective as the one before. We passed the biggest climate legislation during the Biden-Harris administration,
Mm-hmm.
which really has enabled more than $1 trillion in private investments on clean, non-polluting energy sources, which
Mm-hmm.
is obviously um, what we need to try to curb the warming emissions that we're putting into the atmosphere. But at an individual level, I think we all need to be doing more. We need to be talking more about this. We need to be talking about with our colleagues, with our family, at the kitchen table, with in our office spaces, with
Mm-hmm.
our peers. Research tells us the majority of us, independently of which political party we belong to, is interested in curbing the climate crisis, is
Yeah.
interested in scaling clean renewable energy, is interested in offering new jobs and good paying jobs in the new clean energy transition. And so I think there is this misperception that we are the minority, and we're not. We're actually the majority. And so I think as a local individual, as an individual level, we need to be talking more about this. Obviously, we need to be voting for people that put this as the utmost priority. This is an existential crisis that is touching on our economy, that is touching on our health, that intersects with so many other issues that we call them as top priorities when we go and go to the polls and vote. And so I think the power of our votes, the power of our voices, and the power of our purse, the power of how
Yeah.
we put our money to work is also another way that we can all be part of the solutions.
I see a lot of corporations. I mean, I know Google and, all the big tech guys, they all have heads of sustainability that do everything from on the manufacturing side to, how they procure their food for their internal restaurants and cafes that they have within their organizations, and them really trying to limit the amount of excess wasted food or plastics or reusable, recyclable. Uh, they're making strides in those areas. Obviously, they're large companies that have much bigger budgets, but I do see those things actually growing. I didn't see heads of sustainability in those companies even 5 years ago. And now it's a group of people in the company, not one person kind of waving the flag. And I think also what's interesting is younger generations that are going to look at companies as they exit college. They're looking for companies that have that as part of their credo, that they will have sustainability, that they are looking for ways to improve the climate and the planet, and not just a place to work.
Correct. And it is no surprise that people that implement at the corporate level, right? The people that implement measures to eliminate waste become more profitable.
Yeah.
And so it's a no-brainer. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to implementing the solutions that we need, right?
Mm-hmm,
A
mm-hmm,
circular economy
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
that will eliminate waste, that will help us really tackle the root of those inefficiencies are going to
Yeah,
help our bottom line. And from the
definitely.
Gen Z perspective and young professionals seeking work, that is definitely a top priority, that they're aligned, that they're purpose driven, that they're
Mm-hmm.
mission aligned for them. And as from the CLEO Institute perspective, one of our most attended webinars every single year is the one about sustainable or green careers.
Mm-hmm.
We host it around May,
Mm-hmm.
which is where a lot of people are graduating, and there is
Mm-hmm.
an incredible amount of interest to that particular webinar, the webinar that we host every year. So there is obviously an increasing interest from for young professionals to be seeking corporations or companies that are, obviously putting people at the center, people, planet, and obviously profit, right?
Right.
You can do the three of them, and those are the three pillars of sustainability as we know it.
Yeah, doing well by doing good and not greenwashing, as they would say, right? They're actually putting into play real substantial policy within companies. And I do see these younger generation, this is what they're looking for. They're looking for places where they align. Like you said, they align with who they are and their value system, not just a paycheck like it used to be, right?
Correct,
Um,
correct, correct.
Over your career, you must have run into a lot of interesting people and, mentors, I would imagine. But what's kind of the most valuable piece of advice you've ever been given?
Mm. Um, I mean, definitely. I think there was one piece of advice that I was given, actually by the founder of the CLEO Institute. I was going through a really rough time, and she told me once, she said, this was something that somebody had told her,
Hmm.
and she told me that sometimes when things seem to be falling apart, they may be falling into place.
Huh.
And to me, that was an aha moment of sorts.
Hmm.
And it ended up being true. Things were falling into place, but I thought things were really falling apart. And I actually think that speaks volume and truth for the moment that we are right now in
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
possibly in our country.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm going to keep it to the movement and climate specifically,
Yeah.
because I know there's a lot of people that could be falling into despair with everything that we are seeing, the dismantling of the Environmental
Hmm.
Protection Agency,
Hmm.
dismantling of the climate
Hmm.
policies that we're putting into place, people, the US pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord.
Hmm.
But the reason why we're seeing this is because we're winning. It's
Yes.
because the clean energy transition is happening in front of our eyes, and because the industry that has been strangleholding our political system, it's in panic mode.
Hmm.
And this is the reason why we're seeing this huge shift, or at least this attempt to derail
Yes.
um, what has already, in my opinion, left the station.
Yeah.
The country is speaking about energy dominance. To be the leaders of the 21st century, you cannot be the leader of the 21st century if you want to control the AI race, or if you want to
Yeah.
lead in many other ways.
Yeah.
You cannot be a leader when you're betting on 19th century, you know, energy sources. And
Yeah.
so I think we may be feeling that things are falling apart, but maybe it's because we're winning and things are truly falling into place.
I agree with you. That kind of pendulum swing is panic in a lot of ways.
100%. That
Um,
doesn't mean we need to,
no, we're not, but
that
not,
doesn't
don't
mean we
take your,
need to
don't,
follow.
no, no, and don't, no, and don't take your foot off the gas, right?
Exactly.
Or the, keep
EV
going.
vehicle.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, no, not gas. I was just trying to think of the right thing. Off your windmill or off your, right, off your solar panel. Don't take the sun off the solar panel. Right, off your
You
EV
can still
vehicle.
put your foot on the pedal. It's
Yes,
just, you can say pedal to the metal on an electric vehicle car.
electric vehicle. Exactly. Thank you. Um, uh, this is a question I ask every female founder, executive, entrepreneur is what piece of advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Oof. Um, you know, believing your instincts, believing that inner voice that sometimes our self-doubt, um and I think, now, and I'm 53, but in my 20, I think, my 25 years, version of myself back then did not listen to that inner voice
Mhm.
enough, and to not doubt your voice, and to be bold and be curious, and take up space when it feels uncomfortable, um but to seek help and to always be a lifelong learner. I think those are would be the advice I would give to myself.
I love the seeking of help because we don't do that, especially A personalities who are out there, big voice. Seeking the help sometimes is not always the easiest thing to do, but great. It's been really great talking to you. How do people get a hold of you? How do they work with the CLEO Institute? Tell us.
So I'll start with our website. Website is cleoinstitute.org, and we are in every single social media platform at CLEO Institute, and LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, you name it. You can also reach out to me personally, my Yoca at CLEO Institute. I'm also, again, on social media as well. And I definitely encourage your listeners to reach out, especially to the women out there, because as I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, we are leading the movement, but we women are also on the front lines.
Mm.
Women are disproportionately impacted by the climate crisis because of social, economic, and gender disparities. And so, for the women that are out there, let's pay it forward. There's a lot that we can do together, and we offer a lot of trainings, a lot of resources, and again, power over purse. If you want to donate to the CLEO Institute, if you want to participate in any of our programs that we pay
Mhm.
forward to, we actually have a program called Empowering Resilient Women. And so there are many ways that you can get engaged. And I appreciate the opportunity, Cynthia.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know our audience is going to get a lot out of this. And congratulations on all the work that you've been doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.